Good afternoon, good morning, fellow explorers. Thank you for joining us in this pre-departure webinar to give you some more information about your upcoming trip to Iceland this season. Iceland's something very dear to our hearts. We had a little talk earlier and we think this is our 17th season going to Iceland, almost as long as Karen has been working for us. So that's how long we've been going there. We've got a great team coming up, but the aim of this this webinar is to give you the overview of the trip, what you need to pack and take with you, give you some inspiration in terms of the wildlife and science and education program, the activities you'll be doing, what's happening on board, and then a little bit of practical information. But the main thing is to give you an opportunity to ask us questions. We have built this webinar based around the questions you have sent in already. So we do hope we answer those as we go through the webinar. If not, as Lee said, please put them in the chat. And we've got a team behind the scenes working a lot harder than us that are just talking diligently, trying to answer your questions as we go through. I'm joined today by a fantastic team. We have Lauritz, who's currently in Norway. He's our product planner and deals with Iceland, so we can blame him for everything. No, not including the volcano that's just erupted. We have our chief scientist, Verena, and also our head of expedition development, Karen. I think between us, we've spent a lot of time in Iceland, and it is something that a destination that's very dear to us and we're passionate about because it's so different to everywhere else in the world. It's absolutely stunning, and you're going to have an amazing trip. Before we get stuck into the main body of the destination, just a little bit of introduction. Of course, you've all booked with us, so you know us, but for us at HX, it's really important that mix of adventure in a destination like Iceland, also the comfort and to make you feel at home in a relaxed environment on our ships, and also everything we do in terms of the sustainability. So these elements, what we call the perfect balance, but that history and our ships, our purpose-built ships ready for these expeditions are really important, and how we deliver that, along with that relaxed environment, really makes you feel at home. And of course, the sustainability and transparency of what we do is really important. So you will see that featured on board in part of our science and education program, and everything we do from our locally sourced food that you'll be able to enjoy when you're relaxing after you've been exhausted after the day's activities. Since last October, we've gone all-inclusive. So that means that every day-to-day element that you have on board means you do not have to dip your hand further in your pocket. Of course, there are elements of extra excursions and some activities that are chargeable, but the day-to-day elements, whether it be Wi-Fi, cocktails, dipping into the expertise of our expedition photographer, or a water bottle and an expedition jacket. That's all what you've paid for, and we don't expect you to dip your hands in further. So as we then now move into the destination and incredible Iceland, I'd just like to bring in some of our team here. Maybe ask Karen, why is Iceland so special for you?
I think because, first of all, I'm Norwegian, so there is a part of me that kind of is in Iceland too. We share a common history, and it's very evident. The friendship between the nations is very strong, and as a now become a very popular time in age, the Vikings have kind of resurfaced from the darkness and into the light, in a sense, being a very small part of history, but a very significant part of history. So that bonds us. from where I live, for example, the first Norwegian that went to Iceland has a big statue and so forth. So I've been living with this my entire life. So the Icelanders, and I do understand a bit of the language as well, because the Old Norse comes from Norway as well, and they've kept their language so well. So when you listen to the Icelanders, just know that they are very conscious about their language, and there's so much pride in that. So that's what makes Iceland very, very important.
It's extraordinary whenever I'm with you in Iceland, and the language piece.
Yeah,
and it's extraordinary. But
yeah.
So
and close as well.
Yeah, and Lauritz, you study geology like myself, and we're rock nerds. But tell us a bit about, there's a fantastic picture here, but tell us a bit why Iceland's so special for you.
I think Iceland is the birthing place of new continental crust that reaches the surface, and for any geologist, it's an absolute highlight seeing massive basalt columns all along the coast and seeing Earth being basically created as we speak with the current ongoing eruption in Grindavik. So it's always exciting. Iceland keeps you on the move, whether that is in Europe or actually in Iceland. I think as a geologist, it's a must-visit location. And for me, after 50 trips to Iceland, still not getting boring.
Like visiting the moon, almost, except different color, but lots of basalt.
Well, but also great.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Verena, how about for you?
Well, it is an amazing island with an incredible history that Karin just mentioned, a geology that is to die for, really, like Lauritz also just said. But the wildlife in there is also incredible. I mean, there are whales around the island. There are lots of seabirds and other birds. And it is also amazing to see the Icelandic sheep everywhere where you go. So it is an incredible mixture of history, landscape, and wildlife that you can just not miss.
Yeah. No, and I think that when you put all that into a package, that's Iceland. In this webinar, we're going to concentrate, because the majority of our voyages this season are the circumnavigation. So I know we've about 200 of you registered for this webinar. So we're going to concentrate on the circumnavigation. But in doing that, we recognize that we do have some trips at the start and the end of the season that touch some more than others. Parts of Iceland. So what we're saying is relevant to those voyages as well. But please excuse that we are just going to focus on the circumnavigation. But that we're not going to talk about the itinerary in specific, but so we can't talk about every itinerary, otherwise we'll be here for forever and you'll be really fed up with us. But as Lauritz mentioned, this special place for Iceland. You just want to say, I know you've already said it, but say again why Iceland is so special.
So underneath Iceland, there sits a massive hotspot that brings a lot of hot material from the Earth's interior up to the surface. And that results often in volcanic eruptions. And we've just entered a new era in southwestern Iceland, where basically a new material is pushed out as we are speaking to the surface in a fissure eruption. And I actually have the live screen of the eruption ongoing right now. So if we are talking too much and you get bored, you might want to Google that as well. And just look at the lava spilling out at the surface. So quite interesting. And this might be something that you might see during the trip, or you see some smoke coming out. There might be an eruption that we haven't accounted for in our back pocket for you. So you never know what you get when you're traveling to Iceland. But one thing is for sure, lots of cool and amazing rocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of weird thing, especially, I mean, it's one place, but when you're in the West, you're tectonically in the Americas, and on the East, you're tectonically in Europe. Where else can you go in the world like that? In terms of preparation, we thought we'd bring these slides in terms of preparation into the webinar early because we had lots of questions about what should I pack. Karen, you're Norwegian. You're mad about wool in Norway,
Wool, yes.
and we're mad
Wool.
in the HX about natural
Yes.
fibers. But what should you pack for on? We split this into 2 slides, one for onboard and one for off. But maybe just talk us the highlights of what people should consider when packing.
So for on board, I would bring the attention to the lower right side, binoculars, because if you're engaged in just looking at the landscape that changes constantly while you're on the ship, also looking for what Verena was mentioning of seabirds and so forth, binoculars is, when you're on a sea voyage, binoculars is maybe the most important tool you bring. Sunglasses is good to bring as well, but be prepared for changeable weather. If there's something we can guarantee you, is that there will be change of weather in like 4 seasons in half an hour. So so bring like layers. We always, almost regardless, especially in the Arctic and the Antarctic, we recommend layering systems. So as a Norwegian, you will always hear me talk about wool. It's just the way it is. It's the same with an Icelander. He would always talk about wool as base layers. And then, a good puff jacket on top, and then waterproof. And we will provide you, of course, with the wool, with the jacket you put on top that is waterproof or water resistant. And a good pair of waterproof pants too, I would say, if I'm just going to highlight a few things. Waterproof pants, because, sometimes we're going to be in open boats and so forth. So, be prepared for that. And good solid shoes as well. Good shoes that you like to walk in is good. I would say those hats, gloves goes without saying.
And footwear is always a big thing because it always takes up lots of space in the bag. And I think your point about on board, you want a comfortable pair of shoes to walk around the ship and be comfortable, whatever you need. But also on these trips in Iceland, there's opportunities for hiking. So what you're comfortable wearing hiking shoes or hiking boots, nothing too technical. And if we were to have wet landings, if we were going to get wet, then on board we do have a stock enough for everyone of rubber boots, so we can loan you boots for wet activities. But Karen, you mentioned binoculars, and I'm going to ask Verena, our chief scientist. Binoculars. One of the questions I know we get is, okay, you said binoculars, but what type of binoculars? Magnification.
Well, the best answer for that is, if you already have a pair of binoculars and you're comfortable using that one, then bring that one along. Otherwise, if you're going to invest in a pair of binoculars for bird watching or wildlife watching, the best ones. There you go. It would be 8 times 40 or 10 times 40 or 8 times 35. So that combination of amplification and distance.
Yeah. Brilliant. It's also Iceland is very up to speed with technology and use of credit cards. So we say here bring some local currency, but that's for more sort of small crafts. But it's not an essential element because of the use of credit cards. Of course, I think we all know Iceland's probably the most expensive country I've ever visited in the world. So be prepared if you're buying a cup of coffee or whatever. That's don't look. If you try and do the conversion, it's eye-watering. But definitely the aim is to enjoy the destination. Another thing we brought in early is, because I know we get lots of questions, is on these trips, we do not require any medical. So it's you don't need to do any pre-medical form or anything, but please do bring your medication. Also, we are aware that however much we love our airlines, they do have a habit of misplacing our bags. So please, if you do have medication, then either split it or bring some in your hand luggage to see you through. And also be aware that Iceland is an island in the middle of the Atlantic. So as Karen said earlier, we get 4 seasons in one day, or even in half an hour. So the wind can pick up. So we can get a bit of movement in the ship. Definitely Fridtjof Nansen, the ship, is a stable ship, has stabilizers, so is very comfortable. But again, up to you. If you do feel seasickness, then do bring some seasickness medication, patches, ginger tablets, wristbands, whatever works for you. But we do stay relatively close to the coast as we go around. Those trips that are crossing from to or from mainland Europe, then of course you're in open sea. So just be prepared. But we hope that we don't get into rough seas, but it can happen. Okay, some more practical information out of the way, and we're going to move on to some of the things that we may see or do. I'm very pleased that the pictures that we've put in this presentation don't all show beautiful blue skies. And you can see in that bottom left picture, a windy day. But tell us a bit, Loritz, we get these magnificent sort of geothermal vents. And of course, we talked about the geology and these incredible colors. What can our guests expect when they go out and maybe go to some of these places?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say the worst smell of the life, but definitely the smell of rotting eggs, which is part of Iceland. I think everywhere you go, and if you haven't experienced that, definitely be prepared for it, because it is those sulfur fumes that are easing and oozing out of the ground, which is very special. And if you get the chance to visit one of the hot springs, you will for sure experience that as well. Also, when you're washing yourself with hot water on shore, you'll get that sulfur smell, which is absolutely natural. So you'll be definitely experiencing that, as well as seeing lots of basalt columns and colorful landscape that are shaped not only by volcanoes but also by glaciers. So lots to look forward for.
And Karen, Icelandic horses are pretty special and very popular. People going on a trip trekking. Is that something you'd recommend?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But of course, I mean, you know, the Icelandic horse is steeped in tradition in Iceland, and being part of, you know, survival in Iceland for a long, long time, and it has maintained into the modern. Now it's more for leisure. Of course, they are introducing that culture to visitors, but it's strong, and in northern Iceland especially. Where we're going, you will see that the Icelandic horse culture is very, very strong. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's where least of the tourists are as well, is in northern Iceland. So I'm very excited that we get to take our guests, you know, to these places, which, you know, not necessarily are the hotspots, but are kind of being a little bit outside the beaten track. And you can see the genuine culture of which the horse culture in northern Iceland is. Yeah,
and I think that's a real feature of the trips is we take it. You know, you can go to some places by car and bus very easily, but we're taking people away to see the real authentic Iceland. And as part of that, you know, there's waterfalls everywhere, which are spectacular, but also the wildlife, Verena. We've featured a horse again, but talk us a bit about what we need to be look out for with our binoculars.
Well, the sea birds are amazing. There's a wide variety of birds, like the oyster catchers and a lot of other cliff nesting birds, like the puffin and the guillemots and the kittiwakes here. Just please bear in mind that these birds only come regularly back to the colonies when they are mating and reproducing. So there is the breeding season, and they do arrive for the breeding season, remain at the colonies for a short period of time, and then leave. So it may depend when in time you visit these places that you will get to see them or not, or in lesser numbers. But it is amazing to see these birds in their natural environment and hearing the cacking, the cacophony of birds when you approach them. It's amazing. It's incredible experiences. And I also mentioned whales previously, and just before this webinar, I had a quick glimpse at Happy Whale just to see what was around Iceland now. And just last month, they have been orcas, humpback, fin and sperm whales reported around Iceland. So they are common around
They are coming
the
back.
whole island. Yes.
Yeah.
So
that is great news.
exactly. So you will have the opportunity to scan the QR code for Happy Whale in a bit, and you can go yourself and explore a bit beforehand what to expect in terms of whales around Iceland.
Fantastic.
And again, Northern Iceland is kind of the hotspot as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I mean, where there is least tourists and
Yes.
so forth,
Yeah.
that's where the hotspots are, and we're taking you there.
And spending time out on deck, on deck watch, which we'll talk about a bit, but
Exactly.
seeing and looking and exploring, a little ripple in the water might be something. So keep looking, even if it's enjoying a cocktail in the bar, looking out the window with your binoculars, even
binocular in one hand, cocktail in the other.
Perfect.
The way.
So in terms of activities, of course, these are quite busy itineraries. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to see in Iceland. But in terms of activities, Karen, do you want to talk us a bit about the activities that we do, and then I'll ask Loritz about the excursions, so to speak.
Yes. So the activities that we typically arrange from the vessel itself are hikes. Sometimes we are able to do nature landings. That's a lot of private property in Iceland, so we've made some good relations there. And then we try to get you out in a silent little kayak trip. So we do kind of want to an expedition boat cruising whenever it is possible, but we really want you to experience all the facets, which means we use all the toys we have on the ships to also be able to take you on activities outside the vessel, as we do with science and so forth inside the vessel.
Brilliant. And Laura, it's a visit to a brewery. I mean, that's got to be a winner.
Yes, absolutely. That's in Bakadi. Definitely worthwhile if you're in for an early beer. But even if you're not, it's definitely a cultural experience. That's, for me at least, a highlight. But I'm German as well, so beer is running through my blood too. So we basically have in every community or every port that we are visiting one included activity that you can also pre-book right now, or that you might have already pre-booked. And then we do have a variety of optional excursions. And we usually advise only to book one optional excursion per port, in addition to the included one. And then once you are on board, the expedition team can help you unravel or unpack your day, whether the included excursion and the optional are colliding or not, and how the day is unfolding. So the included excursions, for sure, book them in advance together with one optional one. And then on board, the timings will unfold and the expedition team there will map out your day. And
we've got a slide coming up a bit later to show you where you can go into the web and see about pre-booking. But as Lorit says, you can also book on board, and also every evening or at a certain point during the day, the expedition team, usually the expedition leader, will go through the plans for the next day, and depending on the weather and what activities we'll be able to deliver the next day. So there'll be although we plan these things 2-3 years out, then it actually comes down to the wire the night before when we actually look at the forecast. So day by day. But then on board and the science and education program, Verena.
Well, we like to keep you very busy, not just off the ship, like Karin and Laurit said, but also in the ship, on board the ship. So we do offer regular wildlife watches on deck, out on deck, where your binoculars will be fundamental. And we also have a very nice lecture program that will be complemented by other science-related and hands-on activities offered in the Science Center. So we really try to make this a very immersive learning experience for you, of course, covering all the topics that we will be talking about during the lectures and in relation to the areas that we will be visiting with you. So yes, just come open-minded and ready to learn a lot. What we do is we also have citizen science projects that we support, and we invite you to participate in these. So we will either perform these citizen science projects from the vessel or invite you to join the science boat, where we will be taking samples and oceanographic data measurements, and we will invite you to help us do that. And in order for you to be prepared to participate in the citizen science that we will be offering during your trip, we have prepared this list of QR codes that you can scan and come prepared with the applications already in your phones, because we do have internet on board, but it's not very reliable, and it would be very sad if you cannot download the application on board. You will be frustrated. So here they are. The most important ones that for me, but that have also become the most important one for some of my colleagues, right, Karin and Tudor?
Yes, yes.
Is eBird, which works together with Merlin ID, which is an amazing app if you like birds. Merlin allows you to identify the birds even if you are not seeing them by the sound that they make, by their singing. The other one that I really like a lot is iNaturalist, because it is a platform where citizen scientists and researchers come together in just uploading observations of everything living and working together to identify what it is. So even if you don't know what it is and you would like to know, you submit your photograph and people in the community will help you know what you have observed. And it is also a very nice way to have a record of what you observed throughout your trip. And I mentioned Happy Whale, that is the third from left to right at the bottom. They do not have an app yet, but the website is super informative. And as I said, you can scroll in and zoom into Iceland and have a look at what is around in terms of whales. So our lovely Alice, who is in the background helping us, will post a screenshot of this image so that you can download the applications and come ready to be a citizen scientist.
And I think part of that is, it's definitely, this isn't just for your time on ship, but we hope to inspire you that you can use these things forever and have a bit of fun. As Verena mentioned, Merlin app is almost used daily on my phone, listening to birds and seeing what's there. But iNaturalist is another great one you mentioned, Verena, and the flora in Iceland is a little bit limited compared with other areas. It's a new raw landscape, but the colours that we can see are incredible.
Yes. The lupin is everywhere in Iceland, although this is an introduced species, so we should not be so very happy to see it everywhere, but it is, and now it forms part of the landscape in Iceland. What we also see very often is the stone crop or rose root, which is the little green plant on the top right corner. And of course, there is also wild thyme to be found everywhere. So it is not a very big and tall vegetation. It is more small, low-laying vegetation, but there is a wide variety. So be alert. Bring your phone with you, take a lot of pictures, submit them then to our naturalist, and you will get a full description of what you have observed in terms
of pockets of colour just really make them stand out and make it really special. So I think it's really and how that sort of life on the edge and how life is starting, amazing. But of course,
absolutely, good. I'm just saying that it's typical. You kind of get a glimpse of how the high Arctic and the flora of the high Arctic is. I mean, there is somewhere around 490 vascular plants in Iceland, but they are, as Verena says, very sort of low growing.
No, and it's kind of special. And as you say, it's although just the tip of Grimsey Island is above the Arctic Circle, it's a very Arctic landscape.
Climate, very much.
So one of the amazing things Iceland is the culture and the communities. We see a host of different things. We mentioned at the start that connection with Norway, but maybe Karen, I know you're really passionate about the culture, save churches, but go for it. The floor is yours.
Go for it, because I think this is why a circumnavigation or a sea voyage around Iceland gives more than spending hours and hours on the road. And guys, we have done both, so we kind of know what we're talking about in that sense. The maritime culture in Iceland is strong, very, very strong. And although the herring fisheries were, the bed and breakfast before, it's now, of course, become a little bit less of dependencies, but the fisheries are still very, very important in Iceland, although there are different fisheries now. But there are legends about the Icelander fishers who are some of the best in the world. I mean, their fleet and the people who man these boats are some of the best fishermen in the world. There are legends about how they found the herring fields and how women had a very strong role in how to find the herring fields as well. So, and then the sagas come sort of, builds that backdrop to the fisheries who have been there all the time. But the sagas have inspired Tolkien, for example. So the Icelandic saga has more than even Salman Rushdie has been inspired by the Icelandic saga. So, and having Snorri Sturluson as one of the big storytellers, I can tell you in Norway, for example, that the book of Snorri, which is the Icelandic saga, people or kids get for their baptism as part of a tradition that you carry on the story. You know your history before you know your present. So, and I think Iceland has done great in preserving and continue, right, Verena? I mean, we've been going to all these museums across Iceland when you and I have been driving like Thelma and Louise all over the place, and we've seen that as part of it. And so there is there is this melt between the current and the past, and the respect for the past, which I really like about Iceland very much.
No, and whether it's the old herring factory at Djúpivogur in the top left of the picture, it's a testament to the past, but also celebrating the future. And plenty to see. Of course, one of the most iconic things, the Icelandic jumper. Verena and Karen are mad knitters.
Yes, we are. Mad knitters.
Sheep. Talk us about sheep. I'm a Welshman, so I love sheep, of course, but
you do love sheep. Yes, no, sheep are not only cute, but they have been a very important part in Iceland's history as well. There are even storytellings that are related to the ship and farmers that have been stolen their ship by mystical creatures and that have gone into big lengths to recover the ship, even exchanging members of their family to recover them. So it's part of the tradition, Icelandic tradition, to grow their ships, not only for meat, but also to get this amazing wool that has that is super warm. And one of the main tasks for women during the winter is to prepare the wool that has been collected from the ship and to transform it into these beautiful, really amazing patterned sweaters that we all like so much. So it is, and they are super warm, super warm.
Tudor, can I ask you a question, Tudor?
Go on,
yeah,
of course.
Because you've been asking us all the time. I want to ask you a question. Because you have an Icelandic sweater, don't you?
I have a few, yeah.
You have a few, exactly. There we go. But do you know what the name is of your Icelandic sweater? What is an Icelandic sweater? What is the name of it? Do you know it?
No. Well, it's an Alafoss design, but
yeah.
But go on.
It's called Lopapeisa. Lopapeisa is the name of the Icelandic sweater. And I know that sounds completely crazy, so that's why I was asking the Welshman to kind of say it. Because
exactly, testing his knowledge levels.
Yeah, but he knows it. I don't know he knows it. But that's because lopi means unspun wool. So that's why you see that the design of many of the Icelandic sweaters that you have a lot of are made of, kind of coarse spun wool or even unspun wool. And that's what they made them from, especially back in the days to keep people warm. So Lopapeisa.
And I've traveled many times with Karen and Verena in Iceland, and they know every single wool shop in Iceland.
Yes.
And yeah, so there's that. So definitely, if you're a knitter, then there's those. But there's also, of course, I think, we're joking aside, but Icelandic jumpers are incredibly warm, and they're an incredible keepsake of Iceland, and they're very special. So there are also plenty of places you can go shopping.
And I have actually in the chat, because Verena, she knew she had them more at hand than me, but we have made a list of wool shops for the places that you guys are going to visit, and they're in the chat. At the courtesy of two knitters, Verena, I've got it.
And for those that are knitters, I know we're maybe focusing a bit too much on wool, but on board we tend to do a knit and natter group up in the Explorer Lounge, so you can have a hot chocolate and do some knitting. So bring your needles with you if you are a knitter, and if you want to have a go, then of course do that. I'm conscious of time, and we still have a few practicalities to move on. Lauritz, we mentioned excursions. Currently, I'm afraid we cannot book excursions online, but if you do go to your voyage page on the web, it does list the excursions there. You can see an arrow. We've just put an arrow to the bottom part of the page where you can click on the excursions, and that will detail the excursions that are available on your trip. And to book, you do need to call or email our service center to book, but you can also book on board. But as Lauritz, your recommendation was to make a booking if you can. Is that correct?
Yes, if you can make a booking in advance, I usually advise that, because some of the excursions have limited numbers and they do tend to book out. All the included excursions are available for everybody on board. But there will be also other excursions and activities that you will not be able to see online, that our expedition team will be telling you about once you are on the ship.
Fantastic. How about the brewery?
Brewery, I checked the numbers, so still available for everybody that wants to go there.
Okay, so for all our voyages, a valid passport with at least 6 months valid is required. So please make sure your passport is valid for that before you go. And please do check if you do need a visa. It depends, of course, on your nationality, where you're coming from. But we do know if you're from the UK, Germany, US or Australia that you don't. But please do check, because we would hate for you to be caught out in your departure airport. And we also mentioned that there's not a requirement for you to have a HX medical before you sail or for these sailings, because we can get you to help if needed. Of course, on board, we do have a doctor and 2 nurses there and a medical centre at your disposal if needed. Hopefully not. In terms of preparation, we've talked a little bit about what we're going to do, preparing yourself for the Science and Education programme and the activities. If you are that way inclined and you'd like to do some reading, of course, there's a multitude of things on the web. But here are some suggestions of some books. Karen mentioned how the sagas are so embedded in Icelandic history. We mentioned about the Arctic, and the general this general book that we recommend here is a generalist for the Arctic, but it's very much it works for Iceland. The geology, Lawrence has mentioned, Living Earth, and then there's a plethora of fiction books, history books, lots. So yeah, please do take a read. Also, Iceland has been used, because it's so spectacular, as a film set, and we thought it would be a miss if we didn't mention some of these. And you want a bit of fun before you go. Watching Eurovision, Will Ferrell is absolutely hilarious, but you can spot lots set in Húsavík, and also a lot in Reykjavik. Interstellar, a lot of the scenes are there. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is absolutely hilarious, and its majority is filmed in Iceland. So if you want a bit of fun, you can watch those, and you can spot on your trip where things were filmed or not. But yeah, a good bit of fun, different type of preparation maybe. You may not yet have received, I know the first sailings are in May, but you may not have received around 30 days before the sailing. Then we send out the final, or not the final, the travel documents, and that's tied into payment plans for the voyage. So just be aware. But around 30 days, and that's when we will confirm. If you've already booked flights with us, you will have the flight details, but there will be confirmation of those flights, hotels, transfers. Some of you have asked in the questions about our taxis, buses, etc. available. Iceland is incredibly well connected in terms of airport buses, taxis. So there's no shortage of public transport in Iceland. Really, really well served in those departments. We do have, of course, you've all joined us and you are sailing with us, so you've got our contact details already. But just in case you don't, here are the phone numbers and the emails for our service centres for the different markets, whether it be UK, Germany, US or France. But we very much look to welcoming you on board, but we would like to turn it over to you for questions. And maybe I'll bring in I will bring in my colleague Ollie to field some questions that he's been busy taking in and doing. So I will stop sharing my screen, and I'll field questions for Ollie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, lots of questions in the chat. So thank you everybody for asking away. And thank you to the panelists for a fantastic presentation. So going through some of the outstanding questions we have, one of them is around whether it's worth bringing a spotting scope. I don't know who wants to answer that. Maybe Verena?
Well, just remember that we're on a ship. If you bring it mounted on a monopode, then it is maybe easier to use as opposed to using a tripod, but it is a good thing to have. But for more flexibility, binoculars would be more appropriate. And you can also carry them around your neck all the time. But yes, a scope. If you love using a scope, then bring it. Just think about using a monopode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. And then maybe one for Loritz. Is there any horse riding on the expedition at all?
So currently we are enjoying horses from the distant, and we haven't planned any local excursions in Iceland with horses, but there will be lots of horse viewing also on the tour. So you will get a feel for the horses while you're on board. Well, or while you're on land, not on board. We won't bring a horse on board.
No.
Great, thank you. And then there's lots of interest in the wool chat and the sheep. You'd all be pleased to hear. So one of the questions is around whether I think they're asking whether we actually sell these Icelandic sweaters on board or not, and how expensive they are. But
no, and this is the beauty of traveling around Iceland, is that you get to go to these local shops and buy them there. I mean, almost every wool shop have a selection of ready knitted sweaters there, so that you can buy. So that's not going to be scarce at all. You will always find a place to do that. But for those who want to get the wool, we have also made the suggestions to where you can get the wool.
But if you really want to get one, for sure, the best place and with the biggest variety is the one in Reykjavik, the Hand Knit Association of Ireland. The shop there is incredible, and they have beautiful already knitted pieces.
Yeah, and in terms of, Ollie asked about price. Iceland is not cheap, but the jumpers are worth it. And you should be banking on €150 plus.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
150, 200, but they are worth it, and they will last you a lifetime.
Exactly.
Forever.
Exactly.
I have worn one out, but I did buy it when I was 18 when I first went to Iceland. I wore it but no, they're amazing.
You wore it out?
Yeah, I did wear it out. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. And then there's a question about will there be any landings on Grimsey? I don't know who would be able to field that. Is that Karen?
We are. Yes, there is a. The only thing that can hinder us is whether there's weather and weather. But Grimsey is on the itinerary. Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
And just those that may be not familiar, Grimsey is a small island off the north coast, and it's north of the Arctic. Well, the Arctic Circle actually goes through Grimsey.
The island.
Through the island. So it's a fantastic place to visit, but also it is it's very exposed. So again, we will try and go there if we can, but it is very weather dependent. But Plan A.
But yes, we are trying. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So not only can you have one foot on the European and the American continent, but you can also have one foot on each side of the polar
circle.
circle.
Really confusing. Your body doesn't know where it is. Yeah, you might fall over.
I think we're pretty much there on the questions then. But I think just as we have a little bit of time left, I'm quite interested to know what you guys are most passionate about when it comes to Iceland. What do you love about the destination in particular, and what can our guests look forward to the most? What's your kind of personal highlights or experience of Iceland? Tudor. Go Tudor.
I think I've been asking the questions. The big thing for me is when you fly into Iceland, of course you come in and you have this vision of Iceland, but you come in and if it's clear, or then when you travel from the airport to Reykjavik, just the ruggedness and the blackness of the landscape, it just blows you away, and it is unlike anywhere else. So just those initial impressions that you have are absolutely incredible. And then that just multiplies through a trip or days in Iceland. So that those initial impressions just blow me away every time.
Fantastic. Karen?
It's suddenly green, and then it's black, and then there's a black beach, and then there is and the geology is right. And I'm not even a geologist compared to, Lauritz and Tudor here. I mean, but it's right there out in the open. It's, the Arctic has some special treats that way, and there are no huge forests that kind of blocks the landscape. You kind of see the landscape for the rawness it is. And then I'm fascinated by the common culture that we have with Iceland, and how they preserved their culture, how they preserved their language, how they are proud of their history, but they bring it into the future, and they live it as much as they and are, I would say, celebrating their story. It's not dead, it's kind of live, and I love the Icelanders for that. Yeah,
fantastic. That really shines through. And Verena, how about you?
Well, one thing that really surprised me, I mean, I've been living in Switzerland for the past 27 years. We have
70
been
years?
working.
No,
Not 70, 27. We work in polar areas, Antarctica, other Arctic areas, but I have never experienced such a wild winter driving. And it wasn't even the middle of winter as we did, Karin. It's so wild. So I've never had that wild feeling anywhere else as in Iceland. It's an amazing place.
Fantastic.
I agree.
And Lauritz, I mean, you've been there like 50 plus times, right? So I'm really interested to know your answer.
So I'm not gonna say rocks, the obvious.
Judah could have said sheep, so
yes. What I always worship, and don't get me wrong, I really don't like saunas, or I don't like hot spas otherwise, but soaking in warm water in Iceland and how amazing your skin feels afterward is basically you're a newborn. And
it's true.
And that to me is a highlight. I mean, don't pay for expensive skincare back home. Just book yourself a trip to Iceland and jump into the waters there, and you feel like you're newly born. That's my absolute highlight.
But
Keeps me also young.
That's a really good reminder, though, because make sure to bring swimming costumes, swimming trunks.
Yes.
Not just for the sauna and the hot tubs and swimming pool on board, but also if you're visiting a spa, but also every town and village has a community pool, which usually has a hot tub next to it. So
and maybe worth mentioning the one in Husavik, which is the only one that has seawater warmed. So it's amazing and an incredible view.
Yeah.
Best view out of a spa in Iceland. More than Iceland.
You two got stuck in Iceland too long when you were supposed to be doing reconnaissance for these.
We were stuck.
I know. Yeah.
We were.
Brilliant.
And Verena, there's a question around, will puffins be viewable at the time of year that we're traveling there?
Yes, the breeding season is between end of April to September, more or less. So yes, maybe the first trips will be the best ones, but no, yes, it's April to September. Just the numbers may fluctuate.
Yeah.
And a few of the sites we plan to visit, again, depending on the weather, are puffin sites. So hopefully we'll to those.
And we are supporting actually an Icelandic specific project, which is determining the health of the puffins in around Iceland. So if you manage to get pictures of puffins with food on their beaks, make sure to go to the science coordinator so that they can share those precious pictures with the researchers in Iceland.
Yes. Good point, Verena. Very good point.
Good stuff.
Fantastic. Okay, Ollie, should we?
There's one more question around midges that would somebody like to take?
We didn't mention midges.
11 midges,
I
yeah.
can start, but maybe Lauritz is the specialist midge bait. Definitely on the ship, of course, we're at sea, and when we've got a breeze, then they're not so bad. But the midges, particularly later in the season, can cause some people they can be bad in places on a really still interior place. So definitely is worth bringing some midge repellent if you are susceptible to midge bait. But Lauritz, what's your take on the midges?
My take usually on the midges in Iceland is that it's 99% of the time too windy for them to actually stay steady
Yeah.
in the air. So from all of the Arctic countries that I've visited, Iceland is the least midget infected one. So good on you that you are on an expedition to Iceland. Although I would say they usually aren't that bad, but if you're reacting quite violently to midget bites, then definitely bring insect repellent.
Great, thank you. Oh, sorry, one more question around if I choose to bring knitting needles, what sizes do you recommend?
3 and 3.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Or-
Means
quick.
nothing to
Yeah.
me, but hopefully that means something to the person asked.
Yeah, if you only bring one, bring 3.5.
Yes.
Because
Okay.
that's the generic one that you can knit almost anything with. Yeah.
It's perfect for let loppy.
Yeah.
I've
for
learned
leather.
something new today. And hopefully other people have too.
Started
There you
something.
go.
Karen and Verena have been dreaming of actually, but we've still got to get our product team on board to just do a
Yes.
specific
Special
knitting trip.
trip. Yeah.
Just going around Faroes, Shetland,
Itinerary.
Iceland, linking them all together. One
No
day
way.
we'll do it. But fellow explorers, thank you so much for joining us. We would love your feedback. So after this
Yes.
webinar, you will get a link to give us some quick feedback on the webinar. We very much hope we've answered your questions and prepared you a little bit better for your voyage to Iceland. We very much look to welcoming you on board, and our teams on board will do their very best to look after you and make you welcome and have a fantastic trip. So, enjoy yourselves, enjoy the wool, enjoy the culture, the elves we didn't even get around to mentioning, but have an incredible time. Thank you so much.
And welcome on board.
Welcome on board.
Welcome on
Thank
board.
you.
Welcome, thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we will wish you all a great day and conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everyone.